again everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jess and today I'm going to do my August book haul for you. So the first two books I picked up this month were from one of the local charity shops, and I picked both of these up because of BookTube. The first one is Sarah Waters' The Night Watch, and I've been seeing lots of booktubers talking about Sarah Waters at the moment. I think she's got a TV or film adaptation of The Little Stranger coming out, and I've never read any Sarah Waters. I'm cautious because I struggle sometimes with historical fiction. Sometimes I really love it, sometimes I just can't get into it, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get on with Sarah Waters. So this has seemed a good way for me to pick up a book and have a go and see if I like it before I get any more of her books, and this just happened to be the one that I spotted at the charity shop. The next book that I picked up from that same charity shop was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. So again, I've seen several people talk about this on BookTube. It's definitely the fantasy element that's pushed me to pick this up, and also it's a historical fiction but fantasy, and it's set in 1806, around the time of the war with Napoleon, and I'm currently reading War and Peace, which is set around that time again. Obviously the focus is in Russia, but I thought it would be a nice follow-up to that, talking about the same kind of era. So the next book I picked up was Lullaby by Laila Soleimani. Essentially it follows a family who decide to get a nanny after the mother, Miriam, decides that she wants to go back to work. So they employ a nanny, and they seem to have fallen on their feet and landed with what appears to be a perfect nanny on the scale of Mary Poppins. But in the first chapter, and indeed the first sentence, we find out that she's not the perfect nanny. The reader knows that straight from the beginning, and so as a thriller genre book, it's less of a whodunit as a why they did it, and it's a real character study, sort of leading up to the events that we find out straight away at the start of this book. So I'll talk a bit more about that in my wrap up. The next book I picked up from the bookshop in my town, Waterstones, and it is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, and again a BookTube recommended choice of book. So this book follows one woman's obsession with trying to solve find out the identity of the Golden State Killer, and unfortunately she died before the publication of this book, but her husband and editor worked on pulling together the drafts that she had done so far and some of her columns and things from other publications where she'd written about this topic, and published this book. And since the publication of this book, actually earlier this year in about March or April, the Golden State Killer has actually been caught. I have started to read this. I'm on page 197, so I've only got a little bit left to go. I was reading this before I went away on my reader retreat holiday, where we were staying in a field that went very dark and pitch black at night, and when I got there I read the visitor's book, which suggested don't read anything scary whilst you're here, and walking down tiny little country roads in the dark back from the pub. So although I took it away with me with the intention of finishing it, I then didn't actually pick it up there because I am a bit of a wimp and I probably would have spent the nights not sleeping. Then, whilst I was on my holiday in the Brecon Beacons, we took the opportunity to go and visit Hay-on-Wye, which is one of my favourite places in the world. It's the book town of England, and it's this tiny, really beautiful, quaint English village which is filled with lots and lots of bookshops. From one of the used bookstores I picked up Mothering Sunday by Graham Swift, and I saw this quite a long time ago now on Simon from Savage Read channel, and it just sounded really interesting. So it follows the character Jane Fairfield on one Mothering Sunday, and she's an orphan and has no one to visit on this day, and it's asking the question of what is she going to do on this day and fill that time. And it's something I've thought about quite a lot on some of these days where we just take it for granted that we'll go and visit our mothers or fathers, that actually that can be a really hard day for some people. So I'm really intrigued to see what shape this story actually takes, and whether it is just literally a character study of that person and their thoughts and feelings. So the next couple of books I picked up from my favourite bookshop in Hay-on-Wye, which is Richard Booth's bookshop, and it's in an old church, so it looks really beautiful. It's got like old pews inside, and it says on the bookmark that comes with books, Richard Booth's idea that a town full of books could become an international attraction transformed the small market community of Hay-on-Wye into the world's first book town. So he was sort of one of the pioneers behind Hay-on-Wye becoming a book town, so that's really interesting. So from that bookshop I picked up The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. This one is interesting. It's set up, or it's framed, the story is framed as if it's a non-fiction memoir of the Professor Norton Perina, and it sort of sets it up with this newspaper reports at the front saying that this famous scientist has been arrested for sexual abuse, and another one that says he's been convicted for it, and then there's a preface to the memoir which is written by his friend who very highly rates Norton, Professor Norton, and he was paramount in pushing Norton to write his memoirs, and he has then edited the memoirs that he has written. So you straight away get this feeling that you've got this unreliable narrator, as he seems very emphatic about Norton and is very angry about the people that dismissed him after these allegations and after his conviction, and his friends that just sort of forgot about him, and he still sees him as this great scientist. So it's really cleverly framed, and I love that about a book. And the memoirs follow Norton's time in Micronesia on one of the tiny islands where there's another academic who brings him in as like an assistant, and he believes that there is a lost tribe there who have some kind of immortality, so they want to go and study these people. So a really intriguing idea, and I'm really enjoying it so far, so we'll see how what I think about that in my wrap up. Then from that same bookshop I also picked up See What I Have Done by Sara Schmidt, and this was featured on the Women's Prize long list this year, and again at that time I was quite intrigued by it, and then it was on Steve Donohue's channel. He spoke very highly of this as a debut novel. It's a historical fiction, and it's based on the Lizzie Borden case. Now I knew nothing about the Lizzie Borden case, so I researched it when I heard that, and Lizzie Borden is notorious for, in 1892 she was the main suspect in the axe murders of her father and stepmother, and she was tried and was eventually acquitted of the murders, but she stayed in the town where she was, and she was kind of ostracised by the community. Nobody else was ever arrested for the murders, and there's still lots of speculation, even 125 years later, 126 years later, of what actually happened. And so this is a fictionalised account inspired by Lizzie Borden's case. So again, I thought that sounds really intriguing, so I'm excited to get to that one. So although I don't really like historical fiction, so far I've got two very historical fiction based ones. One that's like a historical true crime, and two more historical fiction, so I think I was lying. So the next couple of books I picked up from a bookshop again whilst we were still away on holiday. We were very close to the town of Monmouth, and we popped in there, and I came across a really cute little bookshop called Rossiter Books, which they seem to have one in Monmouth and another bookshop in Ross-on-Wye. And it was just filled with lots of really lovely additional books. So they had lots of the Penguin English Library books, they had all of the New Virago classics that they've just released with all those beautiful covers. So if you're in Monmouth, I highly recommend that you go and check out Rossiter's Books. But whilst I was there, I picked up Otessa Mosfei, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, Otessa Mosfei's My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and I read a review of this whilst I was on holiday in the TLS by, who was the reviewer? Sam Byers reviewed it, and it sounded really interesting. It sounds like it's quite a cliche idea, but I think it's going to be done really well. So the story is narrated by an unnamed Manhattanite who seems to be really privileged and has it all, but she is nevertheless going through an existential crisis, and sort of asking the questions of what's the point, and if we're just defined by this sort of work life cycle. And so she decides that she's going to hibernate from the world and is going to sleep for a year, but she's unable to achieve the state of unconsciousness that she wants, so she turns to prescribed drugs, and she is offered this experimental drug to take, which puts her into a state of unconsciousness. But then she seems to be doing things while she's unconscious that she's unaware of. So she wakes up, she realises that she's bought things, or she's sent messages to people, and she's been doing things that she doesn't know that she's doing. She doesn't remember any of it. So again, that feeling of like an unreliable narrator. She's narrating the story, but she's unaware of some of her actions, or she's telling us she's unaware of some of her actions. So a very intriguing read, I think. And then I also picked up The Humans by Matt Haig. Now, I've seen lots of people talk about this one, but mostly I've seen people say that they're disappointed with it or haven't finished with it. However, the premise behind it I think sounds really interesting. Now, I've never read any Matt Haig before, but from what I understand, it focuses on an alien that comes to visit Earth, and he is looking at this species on Earth from his perspective, and it sort of looks at humans as being these very strange creatures. And I think that sort of in that perspective of looking from the outside in to humans and what we must look like and some of our habits and actions sounds really interesting. I think it would be quite a fun read, and obviously as a human I will relate hopefully. Okay, the next book my mother-in-law recommended to me and passed it on to me, and that is now I don't know how to say it, I think it's The Magus. Hello Hendrix, have you had enough of sleeping? Go on. I think it's The Magus by John Fowles, and again, I don't really know much about it, but it comes highly recommended from my mother-in-law, and it's set on a Greek island. We're due to go on holiday to a Greek island next year, so I think I might keep this one for then. But I really don't know very much about it at all, so I will find out when I read it. Right, the next book I picked up because it is the book club pick for September. This was my sister's pick that was pulled out of the jar, and it is by the author Nick Spalding. So I've never heard of this author, never read anything by him. When I bought, well, it says he's the best-selling author of Fat Chance, but I've never heard of that book either. So we will see. I think, I did have a little read of it earlier, I think it's something to do with that it's following a man who finds out that he's dying, and so it's thinking about how he would live his life knowing that death is near. And then I think they might fall in love with a girl, and it's that question of, I think the question on the back is, how can you give your heart to someone when it might be about to stop? So I think it could be a bit of a cliche romance story, but I'm willing to give it a chance. And then finally, the book that arrived today, so just moved into the August book haul, is The Polysyllabic Spree, and this I bought purely based on the video by Kelly from the channel Books I'm Not Reading, and she talked about the whole series of these books that Nick Hornby has put out. Now, I've read Nick Hornby's fiction many years ago. I enjoyed it at the time, but I haven't read him for a long time. This is his non-fiction. It's a collection of his essays from the Believer magazine, and where he talks about reading and being a reader and just making those observations, the kinds of things we do. And Kelly showed us this on her video, but for each one it breaks it down into the books bought and the books read. So it's like he's been doing for a really long time his book hauls and wrap-ups, but in the form of these essays. So it links very nicely to the world of BookTube, but sounded really intriguing, and so I bought the first one to give it a go, and it's exciting to know that there's lots more in this series to get if I do enjoy it. So that is my August book haul. I hope you've enjoyed this and got some recommendations or some ideas of some of the books that you might like to check out, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.